And even when the muscle cars came out, you know, we had a Super Sport Camaro, and it was fast. It was wicked fast. It was part, you know, burn rubber when it changed gears. It was an automatic. It was completely impressive. But I had this old car thing in my head. You know, I wanted a real old car. I wanted me an old fenderless car. I wanted me an old-fashioned hot rod kind of car, you know. And I was just hooked on that. But I never could seem to get it together because I wasn't a good enough hot rod builder to fit in back in those days. Now, I'll tell you exactly what I'm talking about. I had a 39 Ford pickup, 53 Cadillac engine in it, had the old original, you know, big truck shifter, closed drive shaft rear end. It had juice brakes all the way around on it. Had red wheels with spun aluminum hubcaps. It was what today would be considered like the coolest thing ever. But it wasn't good enough in that day because it didn't have a small block Chevy in it. It didn't have a 4-speed. It didn't have cross traction. It didn't have all things that was hot back then. So like a big dummy, I pulled out all that cool stuff and went out and bought me an old truck and put me a small block Chevy in the straight shift transmission, put all that stuff in there and worked, you know, took it all apart and put it all back together and drove it to a car show. And of course, this was back a long time ago. Nowadays, when somebody says they spent 10 grand on a car, you know, that's like 10 grand. You'd be lucky if you could build a hot rod for 10 grand. But back then, it was a fortune. It was such a big deal that when the first street rod went for sale, for 10 grand in the Rod Action Street Rod magazine, they wrote like a commentary about it. And they said, this is the way things are going to be in the future. Look at this. Here's a street rod selling for $10,000. Just imagine what the world is coming to. Well, anyway, I drove my old truck out to a car show, and I had worked on it night and day for a long time. And on the way to the car show, my little oil cap slipped off. Oh, it just blowed oil all down the side of it. Dang, I said, dang again. But I got my little handkerchief out and I wiped it down and I stuck it back on there. And I had taken out that closed axle rear end and I put leaf springs on it. I got one of the leaves wasn't lined up, so when you run around the curve this way, it would kind of collapse. You know, leaf spring, they'll go this way or that way. Well, this one was doing that. But then I figured out if I went around the curve this way, I could swoop it back up again. So I was driving real careful out the car show because I didn't want to pull in the car show and have my rear end swooped down. You know, I just couldn't be cool. I already had oil on the side of it. I knew I couldn't measure up, but I was trying hard, you know. So I drove in there real carefully with my rear end swooped up, and I backed in beside this guy. We pulled out our lawn chairs. We're sitting there. He walks over. He says, I am so mad. He said, look at this car. Well, he had this limousine. He had like you got one in here like it, I'm sure. This big Chrysler limousine. It was 4 blocks long. It was chrome plated. It was 2-tone. It had real folk wheels with chrome and plating all over them. He said, I spent $10,000 winning this thing and I didn't win the truck. I said, dang, how am I ever going to measure up? I got a $300 truck here. I paid $150 for another wreck truck to put this motor in. Who do I think I am being here? I shouldn't even be here. These guys are like big time. So I'm like nobody. So, I don't know, it's like, you know, it took kind of the sweet off it all. And then time passed and I got me a job driving the truck. And it was like Robert Mitchum. I was out on the road. I had a cigarette. Anybody mess with me? Boy, I knew how to use it. Yeah. I was a dangerous man. I was an outlaw. Yeah, driving for a living. Outlaw. You know all you have to do is be a little overweight, mess up your logbooks. You can be an outlaw truck driver. Yeah. Haul something you ain't supposed to. Very cool. Love it. You know, my whole life dream was coming true. My whole life dream that I had planned in the sandbox. Because in the sandbox, this is how I planned it. I was going to grow up, and I was going to be a little bit of an outlaw, but get over it. I was going to have some hard times, but I was going to get over them. And I was going to get to a place where I could live and be happy, and have a 3-car garage and a little tiny house, and have a hot rod and a daily driver and a pickup truck, which is pretty much what I got now. And life would be good. So time passed and things happened. And one day I found myself with not a lot of stuff. You know, there's this thing about, there's this old saying, a rolling stone gathers no moss. Well, when you're a truck driver, you're kind of a rolling stone. I found myself living up here in Maine and not having a lot of stuff, but also all of that rough-edged, dangerous, outlaw truck driver with a cigarette waiting to take somebody out stuff wore down too. You know, you get older, you get smarter. Live in a nice place like Maine where they really ain't nobody need to take it out, but people are pretty nice up here, you know, so don't need to do that. And I just kind of almost just about growed up, and I was thinking, boy, I sure would like to build me that fenderless, open wheel hot rod I always wanted but never got around to, but I don't know if I could ever measure up. One day I walked in this store, and being the kind of person I am, I was always looking at the magazines, you know, and I saw this magazine on the counter, and it was like this picture of this old rusty car on it. Something like that. Wow. They put pictures of something like that on the cover of a magazine? Woohoo! I could be somebody. I could build one of those. And I think the idea caught on. There's a lot of these kind of magazines around, you know, that have pictures of old rusty cars, and even who'd have ever thunk it? Even Hot Rod Magazine. Look at here. Here's Hot Rod Magazine. What's on the cover? There's an old rusty car on Hot Rod Magazine. You know, this story, I'm telling you this story because, you know those movies you watch where this nerdy little kid that can't fit in, and boys beat him up at school? But then he grows up and he invents the cure for cancer and makes a rocket ship, flies everybody off the planet before it blows up and saves everybody's life. Because times change, suddenly he's cool. Well, all of a sudden I'm cool. Because I built a rusty old hot rod like I was back when I was a kid in the sandbox. How cool is that? So, now that I said all that, that was the introduction. Hope y'all brought you lunch or something. I guess I'll talk a little bit about this car.